The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, and Nadia Osei did not open it right away. She knew what was inside. She had received 4 of them in the past 2 years, each one from a different man, each one carrying the same question dressed in different handwriting. She set it on the corner of her desk beside her cold coffee and walked to the window instead. 41 floors below, the city was already moving. Delivery trucks, people in coats, a woman walking a dog that kept stopping at every lamppost. Nadia watched all of it without really seeing any of it. Her reflection looked back at her from the glass, faint and pale against the morning sky, and she thought, not for the first time, that she looked like someone who had everything and could not explain why that felt like the wrong word for it. She had built her company from a single rented office and a second-hand laptop. Osei Logistics now moved cargo across 14 countries. She had 312 employees. She had been on the cover of a business magazine twice. She had more money in her accounts than her mother had earned in her entire life, and her mother had worked hard every single day until her knees gave out. Nadia sent money home every month. She called every Sunday. She did not talk about the loneliness, because there was no right way to explain it to someone who had spent a lifetime worrying about rent. She was 38 years old. She had a penthouse apartment that a designer had furnished so perfectly, it looked like no one lived there. She had a personal assistant named Claire who scheduled her life in 15-minute blocks. She had a wine rack she never opened because drinking alone in a silent apartment felt like something she was not willing to become. And she had the envelope on the corner of her desk. His name was Philip Grant. She had met him at a fundraising dinner 6 weeks earlier. He was tall, well-dressed, the kind of man who remembered names and used them often in conversation, which she had found charming at first and exhausting by the third dinner. He worked in private equity. He had done his research on her, she could tell, the way she could always tell now. There was a particular quality to the attention men paid her once they knew the number. It was warm, enthusiastic, and slightly too focused, the way a person looks at a painting they are thinking of buying. She had not been cruel about it. She had simply been honest. She had told Philip on the 4th dinner that she liked him well enough but that she was not looking for what he was looking for. He had smiled and said he understood, and then 2 weeks later the envelope had arrived. She opened it eventually, standing at the window. The letter was 1 page, handwritten, which was the kind of detail meant to signal sincerity. It said he believed they were well matched. It said he admired her drive. It said several things about her career that told her he had read both magazine articles. And then, near the bottom, almost as if he had forgotten to include it, it said something about building a life together. She read the word together and felt nothing except a quiet, tired recognition. She folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and asked Claire to send a polite response declining. Then she sat down at her desk and opened the first of 47 emails waiting for her, and she did not think about Philip Grant again that morning. But she thought about the letter that evening. She sat on the floor of her apartment with her back against the sofa and a glass of water she was not drinking, and she thought about the fact that she was tired in a way that sleep did not fix. She was not tired of working. Work was the one thing that had never felt like a burden. She was tired of being looked at the way Philip looked at her. She was tired of dinners where she could feel the calculation happening across the table, quiet and invisible like a hand moving under the surface of water. She was tired of the specific smile men gave her when they first found out what she was worth, the smile that arrived half a second too late, like a light turning on in a room where someone had just adjusted the switch. She was not angry about it. She understood it. Money changed the way people saw things. That was not a surprise. It had just become, over the years, a particular kind of exhausting to navigate. She had a friend named Diana who said she was too selective. Diana meant well. Diana had been married for 11 years to a man she described as steady and decent, and she thought Nadia's problem was that she was waiting for something unrealistic. Nadia had stopped trying to explain that it was not about the standard. It was about the feeling she got, consistently, reliably, every single time, that the man sitting across from her was interested in the version of her that appeared in business magazines, and not in the version of her that ate cereal for dinner, when Claire did not book a lunch, and forgot to eat until 8 in the evening. That version of her was less impressive. She spilled things. She talked too fast when she was nervous about a deal. She had a habit of reading the last page of a book first, because she hated uncertainty, even in fiction. She laughed too loudly sometimes, the real laugh that came out when she was not managing herself, the one that sounded nothing like the polished, warm, measured laugh she used in professional settings. Nobody who sent her envelopes had ever heard that laugh. She picked up her glass of water and drank it, and thought about the community center on the east side of the city. She had been donating to it anonymously for 3 years. Every quarter, the same amount, transferred from a secondary account so that it did not appear anywhere near her public giving record. She had driven past it once, on the way back from a site visit, and seen children in the parking lot kicking a ball around after what looked like a program had ended. She had slowed the car down without meaning to. She had watched for longer than she should have, and then the light had changed and she had driven on. She did not know why she kept donating to it. She had never been inside. She had never spoken to anyone who ran it. She had simply seen it one afternoon from a car window and felt something shift slightly in her chest, quiet and specific, and transferred the first donation that same night. She did not think too hard about what that meant. She went to bed at 11 and was awake again at 5, which was the way things had gone for 4 years. She had stopped fighting it. She got up, made coffee, stood at the window again, and watched the city start its day from 41 floors above it, close enough to see everything, and far enough away to feel none of it. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from her mother, which meant Sunday had come and gone faster than she had realized. She called back immediately, standing in her kitchen with her coffee going cold again. Her mother's voice was warm and unhurried, and full of small news from home. A neighbor's daughter was getting married. The rains had come early. The church roof needed fixing. Her mother asked, as she always asked at some point during every Sunday call, whether there was anyone in Nadia's life. Nadia said not right now. Her mother made a sound that was not quite a sigh and not quite acceptance, and was somehow both. They talked for 40 minutes about everything except what they were both carefully not saying. After the call ended, Nadia washed her coffee cup and left it on the drying rack and picked up her bag and her coat and took the elevator down to the car park. She had a site visit at 9, a building she was considering leasing for a new distribution hub, then a board call at 11, then lunch with a potential client, though she already knew the deal was probably not going to close the way her team hoped. Then the rest of the afternoon in the office, catching up on the operational reports that nobody else on her team seemed to read as carefully as she did. It was a full day. It was always a full day. She was good at full days. She was very good at them. She pulled out of the car park and into the stream of morning traffic, and turned on a radio station that played music she did not really listen to but found quieter than silence. And she drove through the city that was hers, and also not hers, moving through it every day without ever quite landing in it, the way a bird flies over water and never touches the surface. She did not know that morning that the pipe on the 3rd floor of her Clement Street building had already begun to fail. She did not know that by the following Tuesday it would burst. She did not know the name of the man who would be sent to fix it. She was not thinking about any of that. She was thinking about whether the distribution hub would have adequate loading clearance, and whether her mother's neighbor's daughter was marrying someone who deserved her, and whether she should finally cancel the subscription to the streaming service she had not opened in 4 months. She drove through a neighborhood she passed every day and barely saw, and at a red light she looked out the window and watched a man walking out of a small shop with 2 cups of coffee, balancing them carefully, and beside him, a small girl in a yellow coat, who was telling him something with her whole face, eyes wide, hands moving, the way children talk when something is tremendously important and wonderful and cannot wait. The light turned green. Nadia drove on. She did not look back. She did not know that the man with the 2 cups of coffee was Marcus Adeyemi, and that he was listening to his daughter with the specific, unhurried attention of someone who had learned that some things, once missed, cannot be recovered. She did not know his name. She did not know his story. She did not know that in 6 days, a burst pipe would put him in her building, and that everything she thought she understood about what she was looking for would quietly, permanently shift. She just drove. The city moved around her, full of lives she could not see into, full of ordinary mornings that held extraordinary things inside them, and she kept her eyes on the road, and arrived at the site visit 4 minutes early, and spent the morning thinking about loading clearance. But somewhere, Without her permission, in a part of herself she did not monitor as carefully as she monitored her quarterly reports. Something had already begun. Marcus Adeyemi had been awake since 4:30 because Lena had a nightmare about a spider and had climbed into his bed and then fallen asleep horizontally across the mattress, taking up 3/4 of it, the way small children do with the complete confidence of people who have never been told they take up too much space. He lay on his remaining quarter of the mattress and stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathe. She breathed like she did everything, fully and without reservation, little sighs and shifts, and one small sound that was almost a word, and then dissolved. He watched the ceiling go from dark to gray to pale as the morning came in through the curtain gap, and he did not go back to sleep, and he did not mind. He had learned, in the 14 months since Caroline died, that sleep was something that happened to him in pieces now, in small grants rather than the long, unbroken hours he used to take entirely for granted. He had also learned that 4:30 in the morning, with a 6-year-old across his legs, and the room going slowly light, was not the worst place to be. It was quiet. He was not required to be anything for anyone in that particular hour. He could just lie there and breathe and let the morning happen. He got up at 6, carefully, moving Lena's feet without waking her, and went to the kitchen to start the day. The flat was small, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that opened into a sitting room, a bathroom where the hot water took 3 minutes to arrive if you ran the tap patiently. The walls had marks on them where Lena had done things with crayons before Marcus had thought to move the crayons to higher shelves, and there was a table in the corner of the sitting room permanently covered in craft materials because Lena had recently become devoted to making things. Small constructions of cardboard and tape and colored paper that she presented to Marcus with great ceremony, and that he kept on a shelf above the television, even though they were structurally unsound, and one of them had already partially collapsed. He made coffee and 2 sandwiches, one for Lena's lunchbox and one for himself, which he would eat in the van between jobs if he remembered. He wrote a note on the pad by the fridge reminding himself to call the school about Lena's reading group, which had been moved to Thursday, and he needed to adjust pickup. He emptied the dishwasher. He put Lena's school bag by the front door. He did these things without drama. He had discovered, in the first terrible months after Caroline, that routine was not boring. Routine was the frame that held everything else up. If he made the sandwiches and emptied the dishwasher and put the bag by the door, then the day had a shape, and a day with a shape was something he could walk through, one section at a time. His colleague at the maintenance company, a man named Gary who was well-meaning and relentlessly cheerful, had told him around month 8 that he needed to get back out there. Gary had said this with the gentle confidence of a man who had never had to think very carefully about what he was saying. Marcus had nodded and said maybe, and Gary had clapped him on the shoulder, and that had been that. Marcus had not gotten back out there. He was not sure where there was. He was not sure what he was supposed to be getting back to. He and Caroline had met at 24 and built something together slowly, the way people used to build things, without announcing it, and then she had been sick, and then she had been gone, and the something they had built was still there, still standing, but she was not in it. And he was living in the shape of a life that had been made for 2 people, and learning, every day, how to occupy it as one. He was not destroyed by this. People assumed he was, or should be, and he understood why they assumed it. But the truth was more complicated than destroyed. He was changed. He was quieter than he used to be. He noticed things he had not noticed before, small things, the color of the sky on a particular morning, the exact way Lena tipped her head when she was concentrating on something, the sound the kettle made just before it reached a boil. He had become a person who paid attention differently. Lena appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6:52, still in her pajamas, hair catastrophic, holding a stuffed rabbit named Gregory, who had been through significant wear and whose left ear was held on by 3 stitches Marcus had sewn himself after a laundry incident. "I'm hungry," she said, with the gravity of someone reporting a serious situation. "Good morning," Marcus said. She considered this. "Good morning," she said. "I'm also hungry." "I heard that part." She climbed onto the kitchen chair and watched him make her bowl of cereal, with the focused supervision of someone who had opinions about the cereal-to-milk ratio. She did have opinions about it. She had many opinions about many things. She was 6 years old, and entirely certain about the world in the way that he hoped she would hold on to for as long as possible. He sat across from her while she ate and drank his coffee, and she told him about the dream, which had involved a spider the size of a car, and a library, and, for reasons that were not entirely clear in the retelling, a talking cat. He listened to all of it. Was the cat helpful? He asked. She thought about it. A bit, she said, but not really. After he dropped her at school, he drove to the company yard and picked up the job sheet for the day. 3 calls, a boiler check in the morning, a leaking sink at a cafe on the high street, and then, in the afternoon, an emergency call-out at a commercial building on Clement Street. Burst pipe, 3rd floor, reported that morning. He made a note of the address and drove to the first job. He was good at his work. He had always been good at it. He had trained in plumbing and building maintenance at 21 and had been with the same company for 12 years, which in his industry was long enough to make him the person they sent to the complicated jobs, the ones where something was not simply broken, but was broken in a way that required a person to look at it carefully and think about what it was really telling them. He liked that. He liked the puzzle of it. He liked the moment when the thing stopped being mysterious and became clear, when you understood what had gone wrong and could see exactly what needed to happen next. He had tried to explain this to Caroline once, that there was a kind of satisfaction in it that had nothing to do with money or recognition, and she had smiled at him in the specific way she smiled when he said something that confirmed what she already knew about him, and had said, yes, she understood, and had gone back to her book. He ate his sandwich in the van between the boiler check and the cafe sink. He called the school about the reading group. He fixed the sink in 40 minutes and explained to the cafe owner what had caused the problem and what to watch for, and the owner thanked him and offered him a coffee, and he said yes, because it was cold and the coffee was good. He arrived at the Clement Street building at 2:15. It was a serious building, all glass and clean stone, the kind that tells you immediately that the people inside it are busy with important things. He had been in buildings like this many times. He was not intimidated by them. He had fixed serious problems in impressive buildings, and in his experience the pipes behind the walls of impressive buildings failed in exactly the same ways as the pipes behind the walls of ordinary ones. He checked in at the front desk, signed the contractor log, clipped on a visitor badge, and took the service elevator to the 3rd floor. The water had come through the ceiling of a meeting room and soaked through the carpet and was still dripping when he arrived, slow and persistent. He opened the access panel in the corridor and looked at the system and saw immediately that the joint had failed. But he also saw something else, something the initial report had not mentioned, a secondary pressure issue further along the line that would cause another problem within weeks if it was not addressed. He was crouched in front of the open panel when he heard footsteps in the corridor and did not look up because he was looking at a pipe fitting that was doing something it should not be doing, and he needed to understand it fully before he lost his train of thought. How long will this take? He registered the voice before he registered the person. Clear, precise, not impatient but not casual either. Someone who asked direct questions because they were used to needing direct answers. He looked up. She was standing in the corridor in a dark jacket, a folder under one arm, looking at him with an expression that was simply attentive, not annoyed, not performing any particular feeling, just present, waiting, looking at him the way a person looks when they actually want to know the answer. The joint I can fix in about an hour, he said, but you've also got a secondary pressure issue further along this line. It is not urgent today, but it will be within the month. I would have someone look at the 4th floor manifold before that happens, or you will have a bigger problem than this one. She looked at him for a moment. How much bigger? Bigger in the way that requires closing part of the floor, possibly 2 days of disruption, maybe more if the damage gets into the ceiling structure. She nodded once, the kind of nod that meant she was already thinking about who to call and when to schedule it. Can you handle both? Not today, but I can come back Thursday if you want to get it sorted properly. Book it with the front desk, she said. Ask for Claire. She started to walk away, then stopped. What was the cause, she asked, of the joint failure? He looked back at the panel. Age, mostly, and whoever fitted this section originally used a connector that was not quite right for the water pressure in this building. It has been holding, but it was always going to fail eventually. It just chose today. She looked at the panel as if she was actually trying to see what he was describing. Most people in her position would have nodded and walked away at the first answer. She was still there. "All right," she said. "Thank you." She walked away down the corridor. He went back to the pipe fitting. He did not think about her after she turned the corner. He thought about the pipe. He thought about the secondary issue on the 4th floor. He thought about whether Lena's school play was this Friday or next Friday, because he had written it on a piece of paper he could not now find. He worked for an hour and 10 minutes, fixed the joint, documented the secondary issue in his report, and left the building at 3:35. He signed out at the front desk, asked for Claire, booked the Thursday slot, and walked back to the van. He drove to Lena's school pickup, which he made with 2 minutes to spare. She came out carrying a painting she had made, blue and green and something orange in the corner that she said was a sunset, but might have been a fire. He was not entirely sure. She explained it in detail on the walk back to the van, and he listened to every word. He did not think about the woman in the corridor on the 3rd floor of the glass building on Clement Street. He thought about the painting in the sunset that might be a fire, and whether Lena wanted pasta or rice for dinner, and whether he had enough eggs for the morning. He did not think about the fact that when the woman had asked him the second question, the one about the cause of the failure, he had found it unexpectedly pleasant to be asked. He did not think about the specific quality of her attention, the way she had looked at the panel as if she genuinely wanted to understand what she was being told. He did not think about any of that. He thought about dinner, and the painting, and whether he had left the kitchen light on when he left that morning. But later, after Lena was asleep and the flat was quiet, and he was sitting in the kitchen with the last of his coffee, he realized he had been thinking about it without knowing he had been thinking about it. He did not do anything with that realization. He washed his cup and went to bed. Across the city, on the 41st floor of a building nothing like his flat, Nadia Osei sat at her desk, reviewing the operational reports she had not finished during the day. She came across the maintenance call-out summary Claire had added to her afternoon notes. One line about the joint repair, a second line about the Thursday booking to address a secondary pressure issue on the 4th floor manifold, and then a note, in Claire's precise formatting, contractor recommendation that a full inspection of this line be considered within the quarter. Nadia read that last line twice, not because of what it said, but because of how she already knew it had been said. The even, practical tone of someone who was telling her a true thing without making it more dramatic than it needed to be. She had spent a long time in rooms full of people who made everything slightly more important than it was. Slight inflation was the professional standard in her world. Proposals arrived dressed in language designed to sound larger than the thing itself. What she had heard in the corridor that afternoon was a man describing exactly the size of a problem. Not larger, not smaller. Exactly the size. She did not know his name yet. The note just said the contractor company and a job reference number. She wrote a reminder to herself to ask Claire. Then she crossed it out. Then she wrote it again. She closed her laptop at 11, which was 20 minutes earlier than usual, and went to bed, and lay in the perfect quiet of her perfect apartment, and slept, after some time, and did not wake until 6, which was not 5, and was unusual enough that she noticed it when the alarm went, and felt the difference in her body, the slight added weight of one more hour of sleep. She did not connect it to anything. She got up, made coffee, went to the window. The city was already moving. On Thursday morning, Marcus arrived at the Clement Street building at 9 as booked, signed in at the front desk, and went up to the 4th floor to deal with the manifold pressure issue. It was the kind of work that required patience more than skill, careful checking of a system that was not dramatically broken, but was quietly moving in the wrong direction. He was 40 minutes into it, when a voice came from behind him, not the same corridor as before, a different section of the 4th floor, but he recognized it immediately before he turned around. "You found it," Nadia said. She was not asking. She was looking at the section of pipe he had opened up, the same attentive expression as before. "It was where I expected it to be," Marcus said. She looked at him. "Did you want coffee?" Claire said she would leave some in the small kitchen at the end of this corridor. I was not sure if contractors wanted that, or if it was a strange thing to offer. He thought this was an honest thing to say, that she had been unsure and said so, rather than either offering confidently or not offering at all. "Coffee would be good," he said. "Thank you." She nodded and went back toward her office. He went back to the manifold. 20 minutes later, he took a break and walked to the small kitchen at the end of the corridor. There was a coffee on the counter with a sticky note on it that said, "Available if you want it, no obligation," which was such a precise and slightly formal thing to write on a sticky note that he smiled before he could decide whether to. He drank the coffee standing by the window. The city lay outside, wide and gray and moving. He thought about the fitting he needed to adjust next and whether he had the right tool in the bag or whether it was in the van. The kitchen door opened and Nadia came in with a mug of her own, pausing when she saw him. "Sorry," she said. "I did not realize you were still here. I can come back." "No," he said. "There is space." She poured her coffee and stood at the other end of the counter and looked out the same window, and they stood like that for a moment, without saying anything, which was not uncomfortable, and that itself was notable. "How long have you been doing this work?" she asked, not as small talk, as a real question. 12 years, he said, "same company." "Do you like it?" He looked at her. People did not usually ask him that. "Yes," he said, "I do." She looked like she was going to say something, and then changed her mind and looked back out the window. He did not push it. "I read the report you left on Tuesday," she said. "The detail in it was more than I expected." "It costs the same to write a thorough report as a short one," he said. "It saves time later." She looked at him again with that same expression, the one where she seemed to be actually processing what she was hearing, rather than just waiting for it to finish. "That is a reasonable way to look at it," she said. He finished the coffee and put the mug in the sink and went back to work. She went back to her office. He did not see her again before he left, but Claire came to sign off the job and tell him the building management would be in touch about the quarterly inspection and that his company had been noted as preferred for future callouts. He drove back to the yard, then to the school, then home. Lena had made a new construction. It appeared to be a house, though one of the walls had given way, and it listed slightly to the left. She placed it on his palm and he held it carefully. "It is good," he said. "The wall needs fixing," she said, pointing at the damaged side. "I can fix it," he said. She looked at him with complete confidence. "I know," she said. He put it on the shelf with the others. 2 weeks after the Thursday visit, Marcus's phone rang while he was eating lunch in the van. It was Claire from the Clement Street building. She said the building management had reviewed his report and wanted to schedule the full-line inspection he had recommended. She also mentioned, in the same even tone, that Miss Osei had asked if he would be available for a brief meeting before the inspection to go over the scope. He said yes. He did not ask why. He assumed it was professional. He was almost entirely right about this. He showed up the following Monday at 10. Claire brought him to a small meeting room on the 5th floor. Nadia was there with a copy of his report and a question about the junction on level 2 that she had circled in pen. A specific question, one that showed she had read the document carefully and thought about it. They talked about the building's plumbing system for 30 minutes. She asked clear questions. He gave clear answers. At some point, the conversation moved, without either of them announcing it, from the plumbing system to the building's age and its original construction, and then to the general problem of infrastructure that had been installed correctly for its era and had simply not been updated as the demands on it grew. "It is not that the system failed," Marcus said. "It is that the world around it changed and the system did not." Nadia looked at him and said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "That is true of more things than plumbing." He looked at her. She looked at her notes. He drove home that afternoon thinking about the conversation. He could not identify a single thing that had been unusual about it. They had discussed a building. She had asked precise questions. He had answered them. That was all. He made dinner. He read Lena a chapter of the book about the fox who was building a house. The fox had run into a problem with the roof, which kept failing because the materials were wrong. "Why does he keep using the wrong materials?" Lena asked. "Because they are what he has," Marcus said. "He is still looking for the right ones." Lena considered this. "He should ask someone," she said. "He probably will," Marcus said. "Eventually." He closed the book and turned off the light and sat in the corridor for a moment in the quiet of the flat and thought about a woman who had read a plumbing report carefully enough to circle a specific junction in pen and ask a question about it, and thought that he did not know what to do with the fact that he had found that interesting. He did not do anything with it that night. But he kept thinking about it, and that, for Marcus Adeyemi, who had learned to pay very careful attention to the things that stayed in his mind, was already something. Nadia, for her part, had sent Claire home early and sat alone in her office after the Monday meeting and done something she very rarely did in working hours. She sat still. She looked at the copy of the report on her desk, at the circled junction on level 2, at the clean, precise handwriting in the margin where she had made her note. She thought about the conversation, about the moment when it had stopped being about pipes and become about something else, without either of them making a decision that it would. She thought about the way he said things, not to impress, not to fill space, but because he had something true to say and was saying it. She had spent years in rooms full of clever people. She was surrounded by articulate, ambitious, well-educated people who said a great many things. She was genuinely not sure when she had last sat across from someone and felt like every sentence she heard was exactly the right size. She picked up the report and put it in the file with the building documents. She picked up her phone and looked at it and put it down. She opened her laptop and looked at the 49 emails waiting for her. She closed the laptop. She sat there in her office on the 41st floor of her building, with the city going on below her, and thought, carefully and clearly, that she was in danger of becoming interested in a man she had met because a pipe had burst, and that this was either exactly as simple as it felt or considerably more complicated. She was fairly sure it was both. She opened the laptop again and started on the emails. She was very good at her work, but she did not stop thinking. 3 weeks after the Monday meeting, Marcus came to do the full inspection. He spent a full day in the building, working systematically through every section of the line, documenting as he went. At one point he passed the 5th floor, and the door to the small meeting room was open, and Nadia was inside on a call, standing at the window, talking in a low voice about something that sounded like a contract dispute. She did not see him. He did not stop. But at the end of the day, when he was finishing the documentation at the front desk, Claire appeared and said that Miss Osei was asking if he had a few minutes before he left. He said yes. He went up to her office, which he had not been in before. It was large and organized and had a view that went all the way to the edge of the city. He noticed immediately that it looked like a place where someone worked, genuinely worked, the kind of lived-in disorder of a person who was deeply engaged with what they were doing. There were papers and notes and a whiteboard with things written on it in different colors. She was behind the desk, jacket off, looking tired in the way that people look when they have been concentrating for a very long time. "Thank you for the full day," she said. "I know it was a long one." "The building needed it," he said. She looked at him for a moment. "I was wondering," she said, in a tone that was more careful than her usual tone, "whether you wanted to get coffee. Not here. There is a place down the street," as a way of saying thank you properly. He looked at her. She held his gaze and did not look away, but he could tell, in the slight shift of her posture, that she was uncertain whether she had said the wrong thing. "All right," he said. They walked to the coffee place down the street, which was small and warm, and not the kind of place he would have guessed she went. She ordered quickly, the way someone orders who knows exactly what they want and does not need to think about it. He ordered the same. They sat at a small table by the window, and the coffee arrived, and they talked for an hour and 12 minutes, though neither of them was counting. She asked about his work, and he talked about it honestly. She talked about hers, and he listened in the specific way that he listened to things that genuinely interested him, fully, without planning the next thing he was going to say. She told him she had built the company from a rented office. He said, not as a compliment but as an observation, that he could believe that about her. She looked at him as if she wanted to ask what he meant. He said he meant that she was someone who looked at problems directly and did not make them smaller than they were. She was quiet for a moment, and then said that was the most accurate thing anyone had said to her in a long time. He told her about Lena, in the easy, factual way that he talked about Lena always. The book about the fox, the constructions on the shelf, The cereal-to-milk ratio debate. Nadia laughed. The real laugh, the one she did not plan. It came out before she could make any decision about it. He noticed. He did not say anything about it. He just noticed. They finished their coffee and walked back toward the building. At the entrance, she stopped and said she hoped the report would not take too long. He said he would have it done by Friday. She said good. He said good. They looked at each other for one moment that was a count longer than professional. Then she went inside and he walked back to the van. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment without starting the engine. He thought about the laugh. He thought about the whiteboard in her office with the writing in different colors. He thought about the sticky note on the coffee cup that said available if you want it. No obligation. He started the engine and drove to Lena's school. He was 3 minutes late. Lena was the last child outside, holding Gregory the rabbit, and looking at him with an expression that was not quite accusation, but was adjacent to it. Sorry, he said. She sighed, which she had recently learned to do to great effect. It is fine, she said, in a tone that covered a great deal of ground. He buckled her in and drove home and listened to her talk about a game they had played at school where everyone had to pretend to be an animal and she had chosen a wolf because wolves were serious and important. Good choice, he said. I know, she said. He made dinner. He read 2 chapters of the Fox book because Lena said one was not enough. He thought, in the quiet after she fell asleep, about the hour and 12 minutes in the coffee shop, and about the fact that for the first time in 14 months, he had sat across from someone and been somewhere other than the grief. He had not left the grief. He was not ready to say he had left it. But he had been somewhere else too, both things at once, and he had not expected that. He turned off the kitchen light. Outside, the city settled into its nighttime sounds, and Marcus Adeyemi sat in the quiet of his flat and held the strangeness of that hour and 12 minutes and let it sit with him, not solving it, not deciding what it meant. Just sitting with it. The way you do with something that might, eventually, mean something you are not yet ready to name. Nadia got home at 8 and stood in the kitchen and thought about making dinner and made tea instead and stood at the window with it and looked out at the lights below. She thought about the coffee shop. She thought about him saying she looked at problems directly and did not make them smaller than they were, and about the fact that it had not sounded like a compliment rehearsed for the occasion. It had sounded like an observation, a true thing, reported plainly. She thought about his daughter, Lena, and the cereal debate, and the Fox book, and the constructions on the shelf. She thought about the way he talked about her, not performing good fatherhood for an audience, simply talking about his child, the way a person talks about something central to their life. She put the mug down on the counter and looked at it. She had promised herself, after the 7th envelope in 3 years, that she was done hoping for something that kept not arriving. She was done sitting across tables from men who had researched her carefully and liked the version of her they found in articles. She had not promised herself she would stop wanting it to exist. She had just stopped looking. She picked up the mug and finished the tea and washed it and put it on the drying rack. Her phone showed a reminder about the charity dinner on Friday. She looked at it for a long moment. She thought about the community center on the east side, the one she had been donating to for 3 years without ever going inside. She typed a note to Claire to block the Friday dinner and replace it with something else. She did not know what yet. She closed the app. She went to bed and lay in the dark in her quiet apartment and thought about a man who fixed pipes and listened to his daughter debate cereal and wrote thorough reports because it cost the same as a short one and saved time later. She closed her eyes. She slept before 5 o'clock arrived. In the morning she would open 46 emails. She would have a call about the contract dispute. She would review the quarterly numbers and find one figure that concerned her, and spend an hour working out why. She would do all of that. But first, in the warm dark of the room, she let herself sit with the possibility that something she had stopped looking for had found her anyway, the way things sometimes do, not through effort or strategy or the careful management of expectations, but through a burst pipe on a Tuesday, and a cup of coffee, with a sticky note, and an hour and 12 minutes at a small table by a window. Just sitting with the possibility. Not deciding. Not yet. But not dismissing it either. Something small and quiet and real, waiting to be seen. Diana called the next morning while Nadia was in the car on the way to the office. She answered on the car speaker, and Diana asked about the week, and Nadia said it had been fine, and Diana, who had known Nadia for 16 years and could hear the difference in a single syllable, said, "What happened?" Nadia looked at the road ahead. "Nothing," she said. "I met someone." Diana said nothing for a full 3 seconds, which was unprecedented. Then she said, "Tell me everything." Nadia almost said it was too early to tell anything. She almost said it was nothing. Probably. Just a person she had talked to for an hour, which was not even a real event. She said, "He brought a coffee to me in a sticky note." Diana said, "What?" "He left a coffee for me," Nadia said, "with a note. It said, 'Available if you want it, no obligation.'" Another silence. "Nadia," Diana said slowly. "I know," Nadia said. "That man wrote you a permission slip for a cup of coffee." "Yes?" "In a sticky note." "Yes." Diana made a sound that was somewhere between laughter and something more serious. "Tell me everything," she said again. "From the beginning. Leave nothing out." Nadia kept her eyes on the road. And, for the first time in a very long time, she found that there was something to tell. Something that had nothing to do with a magazine article, or a fundraising dinner, or a carefully worded envelope. Something that had started with a burst pipe, and a cup of coffee, and a man who told her the exact size of a problem. She started at the beginning. She left nothing out. Outside the car windows, the city went on doing what cities do, full of ordinary mornings and extraordinary things tucked inside them, and Nadia Osei drove through it and talked and, somewhere beneath the professional and the careful and the managed, felt something she recognized from a long time ago. Felt, quietly and without announcement, like herself. 4 weeks after the coffee shop, Marcus was standing in the cereal aisle of the supermarket on a Saturday morning with Lena, who had very fixed opinions about which cereal was acceptable, when his phone rang. He looked at the screen. It was a number he had saved without making a decision about saving it. He looked at it for one moment. Lena was reading the back of a cereal box with an expression of critical evaluation. He answered. "Marcus," Nadia said, "I hope this is not a bad time." "It is the cereal aisle," he said. "It is complicated." A pause. "I can call back." "No," he said. "What is it?" She said she had been thinking about the system-wide inspection and had a question about one of the fittings he had flagged in the report, the one on level 6. She said she had looked at it herself and was not sure she understood the risk correctly. He answered the question. She asked a follow-up. He answered that too. There was a pause. "Thank you," she said. "I will let you get back to the cereal." "Lena has strong opinions," he said. "What kind of cereal does she like?" He looked at Lena, who was now negotiating a different box off the shelf. "The kind with the small colored circles," he said. Nadia laughed. "The real one again, the same one from the coffee shop. My mother's rule," she said, "was one rule of cereal selection, which was that if the box has a cartoon on it, you are not allowed to read the nutrition label, because the information will only cause conflict." He found himself smiling at the shelves of cereal. "Your mother sounds practical," he said. "She is," Nadia said. And then, more quietly, "She is very practical." He heard something small in that sentence. He did not push on it. He had learned that some things ask to be held gently. "I wanted to ask something else," Nadia said. He could hear the careful quality her voice got when she was choosing words. "The community center on Barlow Street. I donate to it. I have been thinking about actually going. Volunteering, maybe. On a Saturday. I am not sure what I am walking into, and I thought if you happen to know the area, whether there was a good place nearby to get lunch afterward." It is a strange question. It was a strange question. "I know the area," he said. "There is a sandwich place on Grange Road that Lena considers very good." A short silence. "Lena is reliable?" Nadia asked. "On sandwiches, extremely," Marcus said. "On cereal, also. On most things, actually." Another pause. This one different from the others. If you and Lena are going anyway, Nadia said, carefully, maybe I could join. For the sandwiches part. Not to intrude on your Saturday. Lena appeared at his elbow and showed him a cereal box with an expression that said, "This is the one." He looked at it. He looked at the phone. "We go most Saturdays," he said. "Tomorrow works if you want." She said yes, quickly. Then more carefully, "Yes, that works." He said he would send the address. He hung up and looked at Lena. "Who was that?" she asked. "A person from work," he said. "She might come for sandwiches tomorrow." Lena considered this. She looked back at the cereal box. "Will she have opinions?" she asked. "Yes," Marcus said. "I think she might." Lena nodded, satisfied. "Good," she said. "I like people with opinions." He put the cereal in the basket. They walked to the next aisle. He thought about the call. He thought about the way she had said "I donate to it" but had never been inside. And the specific thing that was in that sentence. The person who quietly gave to something, but had not yet allowed herself to be part of it. He thought about the word intrude, and the way she had used it carefully, as if she was genuinely concerned about taking up space in his day. He thought, walking through the supermarket with his daughter, and a basket of food for the week, that he had not expected this. He had not expected any of this. He had gone to fix a pipe. He had fixed the pipe. And now he was here, in the cereal aisle, with his daughter choosing a box with colored circles on it, and a woman who had never been inside the community center she had been funding for 3 years was going to meet them for sandwiches tomorrow. He did not know what any of it was. But he was, quietly and without announcement, curious. He had not been curious about someone in a very long time. He paid for the groceries. Lena carried the cereal. Tomorrow arrived the way Saturdays do, slowly, and then all at once. He and Lena were at the sandwich shop at 12:15, in a corner table, Lena already studying the menu with great focus despite knowing exactly what she was going to order. Marcus had his back to the door. He heard the door. Lena looked up. "Is that her?" Lena said, in a voice that was not quiet enough. He turned around. Nadia was in the doorway in a coat he had not seen before, a dark one, and she looked different than she looked in the building on Clement Street. Different in a way he could not name specifically. Less constructed, maybe. Less managed. She spotted him, and something in her expression shifted. The careful professional arrangement of it, briefly, into something simpler. She came to the table. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. They both looked at Lena. Lena put the menu down and looked at Nadia with complete evaluation. "I am Lena," she said. "Do you have opinions about sandwiches?" Nadia sat down. She looked at the menu. She looked at Lena. "I do," she said. "I think the bread matters more than people admit." Lena's expression opened like a door. "Yes," she said, with enormous feeling. "That is correct." Marcus looked at the menu he did not need to look at. There it was. The thing he had not been looking for, and had not been expecting, and could not now unfind. He did not say anything. He ordered his sandwich. Lena told Nadia about the fox book, and the construction on the shelf, and the wolf she had chosen to be during the animal game, because wolves were serious and important. Nadia listened to all of it. She asked a question about the wolf game that made Lena explain it in full, and Lena explained it in full, and by the end of it the three of them were discussing the relative merits of different animals with complete seriousness. Marcus watched Nadia listen to his daughter. He watched her not perform the listening, not do the warm, polite nodding that adults do when children talk to them. She was actually there, in it, with a small person who had opinions about bread and wolves and cereal, and she was genuinely present for it. He thought about Caroline, and felt the familiar weight of it, the permanence of that absence, the specific way her name lived in him now. He did not push the thought away. He held it, as he always held it, steadily and without trying to make it smaller than it was. And he thought that being here, in this moment, in this corner of this sandwich shop with his daughter, and this woman who was real, in a way he had not expected, was not a betrayal of anything. It was just the next part. It was just life, doing what it does, going on. They ate their sandwiches. Lena approved of Nadia's choice. Nadia said Lena had been right about the bread. Lena accepted this with dignity. Outside the window, the Saturday moved around them, ordinary and irreplaceable. Marcus did not say anything important. But he watched, across the small table, the way Nadia looked when she was not being a millionaire, or a founder, or a photograph in a magazine. She was just a person eating a sandwich, and listening to a 6-year-old talk about wolves, and laughing the real laugh when Lena said something unexpectedly precise. She was just a person. That was the thing, he thought, finishing his coffee. That was it. She was just a person. And so was he. And sometimes that was enough for something to begin. The weeks that came after the sandwich shop were not dramatic in the way that stories sometimes make things dramatic. There was no single moment that changed everything. It was more like weather shifting, the kind of change that happens slowly and then all at once, where you cannot identify the exact day the season turned, but one morning you step outside, and the air is different and you know. They began meeting on Saturdays, the three of them, Nadia and Marcus and Lena, in the way that had started with sandwiches and became, without anyone deciding it would, a habit. The community center on Barlow Street became part of it too. Nadia started volunteering on Saturday mornings, 2 hours helping with the children's reading program, and Marcus would sometimes drop Lena off at his sister's place and meet Nadia afterward, and sometimes Lena came with him and sat at the back of the room and watched with the serious expression she gave to things she was assessing. Lena approved of Nadia. She communicated this not in words but in the gradual expansion of things she was willing to discuss with her, beginning with sandwiches and wolves and advancing, by the 5th Saturday, to a full account of Gregory the Rabbit's history, including the laundry incident and the stitches, and why left ears were specifically vulnerable. Nadia listened to all of it. She asked the right questions. Marcus was not performing normalcy for anyone. He was not telling himself a story about moving on or starting over, words that felt too large and too final for what was actually happening, which was quieter and more particular than that. What was happening was that he was spending time with a person who was real to him in a specific way, who said what she meant and asked what she wanted to know, and laughed the real laugh without managing it, and that he looked forward to Saturdays in a way he had not looked forward to anything in 14 months. He thought about Caroline. He always thought about Caroline. She was not something he moved away from. She was something he carried, and he had learned by now that you could carry something and still walk forward. Nadia, for her part, said nothing to Diana for 3 weeks after the sandwich shop, which was unusual enough that Diana called on a Wednesday afternoon and said, directly, "You are not telling me something." Nadia said she did not know what there was to tell yet. Diana said that not knowing what to call something was not the same as it not existing. Nadia conceded this. She told Diana about the Saturdays, about Lena and the cereal debate and Gregory the Rabbit and the Fox book, about the way Marcus listened, the specific quality of it. She told Diana about the community center and the reading program, and the children who recognized her after the 3rd week, and said her name when she came in, and the way that felt completely different from being recognized at a charity dinner, simpler and more real, and somehow much larger. Diana said, quietly, that she sounded different. Nadia asked what she meant. Diana said she sounded like herself. Nadia did not respond for a moment. She was sitting in her office with the door closed, and the city outside the window, and a cold cup of tea on the desk, and she thought about that. Like herself, she thought about the penthouse apartment and the wine rack she never opened, and the elevator that required a code, and arrived smooth and quiet and efficient, the way everything in her life arrived, smooth and quiet and efficient, and somehow perfectly designed to not require anything of her except competence. She thought about Marcus's kitchen, which she had seen once, when she had gone to pick up Lena's jacket left behind at the community center. The kitchen had a mark on the wall where something had been spilled and dried. There was a pad by the fridge covered in notes, reminders and drawings, and one sticky note that just said eggs with a question mark. The shelf above the television had the constructions on it, the cardboard and tape creations, one of them listing slightly to the left. It was the most inhabited room she had stepped into in years. She had stood in it for 2 minutes, while Marcus found the jacket and felt something she could not name efficiently. Now, On the phone with Diana, she tried. "There is a shelf in his sitting room," she said, "with things Lena made. They are falling apart. He keeps them anyway." Diana was quiet. "I know," Nadia said. Diana said gently, "Do you know what you want?" Nadia looked at her cold tea. "I think I do," she said. The problem, and she knew it was a problem because she had been honest with herself for 38 years and was not about to stop now, was that she did not know what Marcus wanted. She knew he liked the Saturdays. She knew he was present during them in the way he was present for things that mattered to him. She knew that when she said something true, he listened to it differently than he listened to everything else, a small shift in attention that she had learned to recognize. What she did not know was whether any of that meant what she was beginning to hope it meant. She did not know about Caroline, not fully. She knew there had been a wife. She knew she was gone. She did not know when, or how, or what the weight of it was for him now. She had not asked, because she understood, in the specific way of a person who has her own things she does not readily offer, that some things ask to be given, not taken. She was waiting. This was new for her. Nadia Osei was not someone who typically waited. She identified things she wanted, assessed the path to them, and moved. It was how she had built everything she had built. But this was different. This was not something you could move toward efficiently. This was something you had to approach carefully, the way you approach something fragile, that you do not want to break by reaching for it too directly. So she waited. And she volunteered at the reading center on Saturdays. And she met them for sandwiches afterward. And she let the weeks go on doing what they were doing. The evening that changed the quality of things was a Thursday in early autumn. She was at the building finishing a long call when her phone showed a message from Marcus. It said, simply, "Lena has a temperature. I cannot do pickup from my sisters. I am trying to find someone. Just letting you know Saturday might not work." She looked at the message. She wrote back, "I can do pickup." He wrote back immediately, "You do not have to do that." She wrote, "I know." There was a pause. He wrote the address. She left the office at 3:40, which she had not done on a Thursday in approximately 2 years, and drove to his sister's house, a woman named Adeyeze who opened the door and looked at Nadia with an expression that covered a great deal of ground in a short amount of time, and said, "You are Nadia." "Yes," Nadia said. "I have heard about you," Adeyeze said, in a tone that was not entirely neutral. Nadia said, "I hope most of it was good." Adeyeze considered this. "Come in," she said. Lena was on the sofa under a blanket with Gregory, looking smaller than usual and pink-faced from the temperature. She looked up when Nadia came in, and her expression did not have its usual full wattage, but she reached one arm out from under the blanket in greeting, which Nadia accepted by coming to sit beside her and asking how she was feeling. "Terrible," Lena said with dignity. "Yes," Nadia said. "That is the honest answer." She drove Lena home. Lena fell asleep in the car seat, which was the most trust a person can extend, and Nadia drove carefully and quietly through the city and did not turn the radio on. Marcus was home when they arrived. He came down to the street and lifted Lena out of the car, still half asleep, and Lena put her head on his shoulder, and he held her with the easy competence of someone who has done this 10,000 times. He looked at Nadia over Lena's head. "Thank you," he said. She looked at them both, this man and his daughter in the early autumn light on the pavement outside his flat. She was very dignified about it, Nadia said. She said terrible and meant it. He almost smiled. The specific almost smile she had learned preceded the real one. "She is always dignified," he said. She said she hoped Lena felt better. He said he would let her know. She turned to go. "Nadia," he said. She turned back. He looked at her for a moment. Lena's weight was shifting on his shoulder, and he adjusted his hold and looked at Nadia and said, carefully and plainly, "Stay. If you have not eaten, there is soup." She looked at him. "There is good soup," he added, and the almost smile arrived. She stayed. Lena was put to bed with the appropriate care and the Fox book, 2 chapters, which Nadia could hear from the kitchen because the flat was small and sounds traveled. She sat at the kitchen table and looked at the notes on the pad by the fridge and the mark on the wall and the shelf through the doorway with the constructions on it. Marcus came back and made soup, which was genuinely good, the real kind that had been made properly rather than opened from a tin. They sat at the kitchen table and ate it, and talked in the quiet way that is only possible in a small flat when a child is asleep in the next room, low voices and no hurry. He told her about Caroline. Not the whole story, the outline of it. She was sick for 8 months, and she was 37 years old, and Lena was 4 when it happened, and Marcus had taken the year that followed 1 week at a time, because anything larger than a week was too large to see, without it going dark at the edges. He said it without drama. He said it the way he said everything true, plainly, at exactly the right size. Nadia did not say she was sorry, because sorry felt thin for the weight of what he was describing. She said, "She sounds like she was someone worth all of that." He looked at the table. "She was," he said. "She really was." They sat in the quiet of that for a moment. Then Marcus looked up and looked at Nadia with an expression she had not seen before, open and clear, and without the careful management she had come to recognize as the thing he did when he was not yet sure of something. "I want you to know," he said, "that the Saturdays are not just the Saturdays for me. I want to say that plainly, so that there is no misunderstanding." She looked at him. "I know," she said. "They are not just the Saturdays for me either." Outside, the city did its nighttime things. Inside the small kitchen in the flat with the mark on the wall and the notes on the pad and the constructions on the shelf, 2 people sat at a table with empty soup bowls between them and said true things to each other, with no audience and no management and nothing between them except the truth. It was the most ordinary evening. It was the most significant evening. Nadia drove home late. She stood in her apartment and looked at it, the clean surfaces and the perfect furniture, and the wine rack, and the 41 floors of glass between her and the street below. She did not feel the old familiar distance of it. She felt, instead, like a person who knew where she was going. She set her bag down, and sat on the sofa, and looked at the room. She was going to have to sell this apartment. The thought arrived without drama, without a buildup of reasoning or deliberation. It simply arrived clear and quiet, the way true things do when you have been moving toward them for longer than you realized. She was not going to tell anyone that yet. She was going to let it sit for a while, the way you let a decision sit when you want to be sure of it. But she was already sure. She had been sure, if she was honest, since a man crouched over an open panel had looked up and told her the exact size of a problem. She turned off the light and went to bed. The city went on below her, full of ordinary evenings and extraordinary things inside them. She closed her eyes and slept. She slept past 5. The news got out on a Friday, the way things like that always seem to get out, not in a single moment but in the way a rumor travels, through adjacencies and second-hand mentions, until it arrives where it was going to arrive, and you simply have to stand there and meet it. A photograph had been taken outside the sandwich shop 3 Saturdays back, not by a press photographer, just a person with a phone, who recognized Nadia Osei, and posted it with a caption that was meant to be innocent, and was not. In the photograph she was laughing at something, the real laugh, the full one, and beside her was a man in a work jacket, and between them, a small girl with pigtails, holding a sandwich with both hands. The caption said something about the local entrepreneur, spotted in the neighborhood with unknown company. Unknown company was doing a great deal of work in 2 words. By Friday evening, it had been shared enough times to matter. Marcus texted her. Just a link to the post and then, below it, "Are you okay?" She looked at the link and looked at the photograph and thought about the fact that she was laughing. The real one, caught in the act of it by someone she did not know, on a street she did not usually appear in news coverage. She texted back, "Yes." Then, "The picture is actually very good." He wrote back, "Lena will demand a copy." She laughed again, the same one, alone in her office. She called her communications director, a woman named Priscilla who had handled more difficult things than a candid photograph, and told her not to respond to anything, and not to comment, and to let it settle. Priscilla asked if there was anything she should know. Nadia said not right now. The board said nothing publicly. But she had a call with two of the senior members the following Monday, ostensibly about the quarterly figures, and at the end of it one of them, a man named Arthur who had the particular manner of someone raising something he has prepared in advance, said he had noticed some press activity regarding her personal life. She waited. He said the board's concern was simply reputational, given the profile of the company. She looked at him through the screen. "What is the reputational concern, Arthur?" she said. "Be specific." He was not specific. He used words like optics and public perception, and something about the weight of leadership. She listened to all of it with the same expression she used in negotiations when someone was telling her something she was not going to agree to. When he finished, she said, "I am going to be clear. My personal life is not a board agenda item. I am going to handle my relationships as I see fit. If there is a specific professional concern related to company operations, I am available to hear it. If the concern is about who I eat sandwiches with on a Saturday, then we are done here." Arthur did not say anything else about it. She sent Marcus a message that evening. Just, "Had an interesting meeting today. Will tell you about it." He wrote back, "Good interesting, or bad interesting?" She thought about it. She wrote, "Clarifying interesting." He wrote, "Those are the best kind." She put the phone down and looked at the quarterly figures open on her laptop, and felt, with complete clarity, that she did not care about the photograph, or what Arthur said about optics, or what anyone in her professional world thought about who she was spending her Saturdays with. She cared about the figures. She was very good at the figures. She would handle the figures with full attention and competence, and deliver another strong quarter, because that was her work, and she was serious about it. But Arthur's opinion of her personal life was something she was entirely done with. She went back to the figures. Marcus, for his part, heard about the photograph from Gary, who had found it through someone who had shared it, and who arrived at the yard on Monday morning with the energy of a person carrying a very interesting piece of information. "That is the Osei woman," Gary said, showing him the phone. "The logistics woman, the one in the magazines. Is she a client?" Marcus looked at the photograph. Nadia laughing. Lena with the sandwich. "Yes," he said. "She is a client." Gary looked at the photo again, then at Marcus. "Right," he said, with the specific tone of someone who knew they were not getting the full story, and was deciding whether to push on it. He decided not to. He put the phone away. Marcus picked up the job sheet for the day and thought about the photograph. He thought about the fact that he was a maintenance contractor who drove a company van and lived in a 2-bedroom flat, and could not afford dinner at the kind of restaurants Nadia probably ate in when she was being taken to dinner by men who sent carefully handwritten envelopes. He thought about this without drama. He thought about it the way he thought about problems, looking at it directly. He was not a man who had ever needed things to be different than they were. He had always known his value was not located in what he owned, or where he lived, or what number appeared when you looked up his accounts. He had built things he was proud of. He had raised a daughter he was proud of. He had fixed things that needed fixing, quietly and well, for 12 years. But he was not naive. He knew what the world thought about the distance between his life and hers. He knew that the photograph, to most people looking at it, raised a question about what she was doing there. He thought about the soup kitchen conversation, about the things they had said plainly to each other. He thought about the constructions on the shelf that she had looked at in the way a person looks at something they find genuinely beautiful. He started the van. He went to the first job. He did not resolve the question that morning. He let it sit with him, the way he let most things sit with him, patiently, without forcing it to be something it was not yet ready to be. But in the afternoon, between the second and third jobs, he pulled over and wrote her a message. It took him 3 attempts to say what he wanted to say, which was unusual for him, because he was not generally a person who needed multiple attempts. The final version said, "I want to be straightforward about something. I am aware that I am not what people in your world would expect. I do not have what they have. I am not bothered by that for myself. But I want you to know I see it clearly, and I am not asking you to manage it or explain it. I just want you to know I know." He sent it. He waited. Her reply came 12 minutes later. It said, "Marcus, the men in my world sent me envelopes. You left me a sticky note that said, 'No obligation. You are not what they would expect.' That is the entire point. He read it twice. He put the phone in his pocket and sat in the van for a moment. Then he got out and went to the third job. He fixed what needed fixing. He did it well, the way he always did it, because it mattered to him to do things well, regardless of who was watching. Nobody was watching. Nobody needed to be. 3 Saturdays after the photograph, they took Lena to a park she had been requesting for 2 months, a large one with a hill. She had announced she needed to roll down. It was the kind of announcement that admitted no argument. They climbed the hill, all 3 of them. Lena ran ahead. Marcus and Nadia walked, and the conversation moved through several things. A deal she was closing, a building he was starting a new inspection contract on, a book Lena had finished, and the fox who had finally completed the house. "How did it end?" Nadia asked. "He finished it," Marcus said. "It took longer than he thought. It was better than he expected." She looked at the hill, at Lena reaching the top and turning around with enormous satisfaction. "That is a good ending," she said. "Yes," Marcus said. "It is." Lena rolled down the hill. She did it twice. She came back to them covered in grass and completely satisfied with the results. They ate lunch at a place Lena chose, which served soup and good bread, and was warm inside against the autumn air. Lena sat between them and told them about a dream she had had that was entirely positive, involving a helpful cat, which was a pleasant change from the spider situation. Nadia and Marcus looked at each other across the top of Lena's head during the dream description, and the look that passed between them was not a speech. It did not need to be. It was just a look, the kind that 2 people share when they are inside the same moment, and they both know it, and neither of them is going anywhere. Later, walking back to the car, Lena between them holding a hand from each side, she looked up at Marcus and said, in her most thoughtful voice, "Nadia is good at listening." "Yes," Marcus said. "She is." Lena looked up at Nadia. "My dad is good at listening too," she said, as if providing complete information. "I know," Nadia said. Lena considered this arrangement and appeared satisfied. She swung their hands once and then let go and ran ahead to the car, which she had decided to reach first. Marcus and Nadia walked the last few steps behind her. "She is going to run everything someday," Nadia said. "I know," Marcus said. "I am preparing for it." She laughed. "The real one." He looked at her when she laughed. He had been looking at her when she laughed for weeks. He had stopped pretending he was not. At the car, he buckled Lena in, who was already explaining to Gregory what hills felt like when you rolled down them. Marcus straightened and looked at Nadia. "I want to take you to dinner," he said. "Properly. Just us. I am asking plainly so there is no misunderstanding." She looked at him for a moment. "Yes," she said. "I would like that." "Not the kind of place that sends envelopes," he said. She smiled. "No," she said. "Not that kind." "The kind with good soup," he said. She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "Exactly that kind." He nodded. She nodded. Behind the car window, Lena was still telling Gregory about hills with great technical detail. They drove back through the city that was theirs, and also theirs together now, something shifting in the way it looked, more inhabited than before, more real. Neither of them said anything grand about it. There was nothing grand to say. It was just a park and a hill and a lunch and a walk and a look across a table and 2 people who had both, in their different ways, stopped performing what they were and started just being it. That was everything. That was more than enough. Nadia did not think about the penthouse that evening. She thought about dinner, the kind with good soup, and about the way Lena had swung their hands and let go and run ahead. She sat on her sofa in the quiet of the apartment and thought about the things she was going to do differently and did not feel afraid of any of it. The wine rack still had not been opened. She looked at it. She got up, opened it, took out a bottle she had been given years ago by someone who had known what they were doing when they chose it, and poured a glass and sat back down. She drank it. In the building on Clement Street, the pipes held. In the flat with the mark on the wall and the notes on the fridge pad and the shelf with the constructions on it, Marcus put Lena to bed, 2 chapters. The Fox book finished now, and a new one started. and sat in the kitchen after with the lights low and thought about dinner, the kind with good soup, and about the way things had arrived in his life without announcement, without strategy, through a burst pipe and a sticky note, and a 6-year-old's opinion about cereal. He thought about Caroline. He held it the way he always held it. And then he thought about Nadia. He held both. He turned off the kitchen light. Outside, the city settled. And somewhere in it, between a penthouse that had held one person for 4 years and a small flat with a listing construction on the shelf, something quiet and true was doing what such things do when they are left room to exist. It was growing. Not with noise, not with announcement, just growing. The way the right things do.